So as we begin to use desktop GIS, I want to go over some of the basic parts or components of the software that you're going to be using. So just a reminder that we are using ArcMap 10.6.1, and this is a product that is developed and owned by ESRI, which stands for Environmental System Research Institute. It is probably the largest GIS software company, has a lot of components to this product. We've used ArcGIS Online. Prior to ArcMap Desktop, there was another desktop product called ArcView. And what's interesting, when I started with Arc Desktop, I think we were in version 8.0, and then we went to 9.0 and 9.2, on and on. And each time you have a major jump, so the software has a major update. So from 8 to 9 was a major change. From 9 to 9.2 was not a major change. But when the change went from ArcView to ArcMap, it was like a whole animal. And Esri is the last couple of years been rolling out a product called Arc Pro, which is dramatically different than ArcMap Desktop. But the industry is a little slow to adapt, and so many employers and educational institutions are still using ArcMap Desktop. In 246, we began to look a little bit at Arc Pro. And we use that because we get a great deal. They work with colleges. We're part of a community college consortium, and so we get the license for all of you for $1,000 a year. It looks like it says $4,000 per customer per year, so maybe my $5,000 software was a little over enthusiastic. But every time you add another tool or license, it increases the price. So that's probably the basic starting cost of ArcMap, and where we have access to a much higher level product. When you look at the folder, either in your all programs or wherever your software is loaded, you open up ArcGIS, you're going to see several different components of the 10.6.1 software that we've installed. Most of you who have installed this program on your own have opened up ArcGIS Administrator. There is an Arc Catalog that's a standalone program that we won't use this term. ArcGlobe and ArcScene are kind of give you three-dimensional views. We're not going to work with that this term either, but we're going to work with ArcMap. And the icon for ArcMap is kind of the globe with the magnifying glass on it. So that's what you're going to look at. So there are many components to this software, and one of the components that I'll talk about a lot is the MXD, which stands for Map Document. That's the file extension for Map Document. The MXD allows you to look at your data, but you need to know that the data does not live in the MXD. It's just a window or a way that you can manipulate your data, create data, analyze data, make a map, but the MXD and the actual data itself are different components. So, autocorrect. I totally hate autocorrect. So at some point this term, I'm going to ask you to send me your MXD and your data and a PDF map. The first couple of weeks, I think all you're going to send me is a PDF map. And a PDF map is standalone, and you create that after you make your, open up your MXD and do your analysis and manipulation. But if you send me an MXD and you do not send me your data, it is completely useless. I can open an MXD, but there will be nothing there. Okay, these two components do not live together. You have to put them together in a folder, and you have to send those to your employer or to me or whoever. So let's look at the MXD for the first lab. I'm going to go ahead and move that down. So the lab is Lab 7 ArcGIS zip file, and I'm going to extract that file onto my desktop. And so you're going to see that that's going to open up. And what I would do with that right at this point is go ahead and put your last name in that. It will save you a lot of grief later. So when you open up this folder, you're going to see an MXD. It's the world.mxd. There's the directions for the lab, and you see a folder called data. So let's open that MXD. The first time you run ArcMap, it may take a few minutes to launch. So I have opened that MXD, and what you're going to see is a really, really ugly map. And so this week we're focusing on cartographic principles, so you want to make sure that you address those components. So when I'm looking at the MXD, I see, depending on how you configured yours, most of them will open up looking a little bit like this. There is a bunch of tools at the top. This is your data layers. The only one checked is world and ocean, and so that's what you're seeing. The first thing you want to do is save your MXD with a different name, and it needs to be inside your folder, and it needs to be in the same location as the world MXD beside your data folder. So you're going to change the name of that to Songer. No, you're not going to change it to your name. And you don't have to type MXD. That will happen automatically. So if I go back here, I now see my original file, and I see a copy of that, which I've just launched. We're going to unlaunch that a second here. Called Songer Lab 7. And so that is the map that I'm working on right now. Okie doke. In your MXD, there's a folder called the table of contents, or a window called the table of contents, and you'll see it in the labs referred to as the TOC. The table of contents lets you look at data layers, change the name of layers, but when you change them in the table of contents, it only changes it in the MXD, and I'll show you what that means. You can make changes in the symbology, the color, the line weight. You can open up menus and change labels and tables. So let me show you how to find your table of contents should you accidentally close it, and how to dock it or move it, which I find totally a deprovement in ArcMap. So it says table of contents here. First thing you may want to do is hit that X, and then it's gone. And if you don't remember it's called the table of contents, it's hard to Google that. That would be under your Windows. So if you go to Windows and choose table of contents, that will come back on. Esri has added a docking option, so if I left click the mouse, you can see these little docking features, and I can put the table of contents wherever I want it. You can move it off the window and move it beside your map if you want, so you can do that. But I'm going to just go ahead and put it back where I normally keep my table of contents. So again, this is showing the different layers. If it's checked, that layer is viewable, visible. If it's unchecked, the layer is not visible, very much like ArcGIS Online. I can click that box and change the color. I can click the box and change the color of the line. I can make this more hideous than it was before. So you have some control over the general look of your data that's being viewed. If I were to open up, if I click this once, I can change the title, and I'll show you what I mean by it changes it in the table of contents only in a minute. If I right-click this layer, I can open up the attribute table, which shows me all the data that is in that layer. I can sort this table alphabetically. I can sort the shape length. That means the area or the length of each of these rivers. So I have some access for that. I can highlight this, and you'll notice that that river segment is highlighted. If I double click, it'll zoom me into that. So I have some control over that. And then I can get back to my map the way it was. If I want to turn on the label to the rivers, I can do that as well. And then if I go into properties, there are lots of tools that we will explore later. It's another way to change the name of the layer. So the catalog that's part of your MXD shows you the location of your data. You can do some changes in that file or that folder, naming your data, moving data from one place to another, copying it. There's some limitations with that as well. So let's take a look at ArcCatalog, or at the catalog. Okay, so I'm going to open catalog, and I'm going to pin it open so that we have access to that. What you notice here is my MXD is bold, and so that's showing me that I have an active file, and that's the one that I am currently editing. I can see that there is a folder here called Data, and if I expand that box, I can see that I have layers here of Canada, Ocean, State, W Lake, World, W River, and World Cities. So a little while ago, I changed the name of this in the table of contents to Rivers. It did not update it in the data folder. So if I wanted to change the name of the actual layer name, I have to do that here in ArcCatalog. If I go into my table of contents, oh, you can't see and click properties, that's cut off, but you'll see that. If I go to source, it shows me that this layer that I'm looking at, rivers, is a line, not a polygon, not a point, and it's showing me the path name. Where is that data being pulled from currently? And so it's on the desktop in a folder called Lab 7, in a subfolder called Lab 7 Songer, in a folder called Data, and the name of that folder is W River. Okay. If I change this now, notice this still says rivers, and I go back to properties at the bottom of that list. It's changed. I have officially changed the name of the data layer. Here, I'm changing the name of the layer just for the purposes of this map and this visualization. In Catalog, I can also copy and create folders. So let's say I have another, I'm going to make another folder called Practice 2, and I want to copy Canada into that folder. I can do that, and so I have a duplication of the Canada folder. And I'm going to drag this Canada into my map. So there is an interaction between the table of contents and catalog. So if right now I am in a table of contents operation called list by drawing order. So I can move I could move, you can see that this really ugly world file is covering up Canada. So I can drag Canada on top of that. That's why they officially got called layers, right? So I have these layers of data. So I've got the data now in my drawing order. If I were to put the river file down here, you wouldn't be able to see it unless I turned everything off. That's the list by drawing order. The other option here is the list by source. And I often work in this setting so that I can see where my data is being pulled from. So you can see that the Canada file that I added, I made a copy of in the folder called Practice 2, and I added a folder called Canada, is that Canada is being pulled from that folder. And here is a copy of the original that is from the Songer data folder. So sometimes students will have data that is in 2 or 3 different places and they don't remember that. So if they're working like this, you may have data from your desktop, data from a flash drive, data from an online source, and you don't remember that your data is in different places, so that when you finish a project, package up your map and your data, you actually forget to grab all the data that you have. So I often make sure I know where my data is and where I'm pulling my data from. So there are 2 main windows in ArcMap. One is the data view, and that's the window that we were working in. The other is the layout view, which is the window that shows you what your map would look like if you were creating a map. So let's look at both of those. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this layer. So if I right-click and remove that, it doesn't delete the layer, it just removes it from my table of contents, so that layer is still there. So right now I'm working in what's called data view. So if you go up here, you see data view and layout view. You can also see that down here at the bottom, there's data view, there's layout view, and this is called a data frame. So in my table of contents, I have a data frame. Lots of terminology here. So I'm going to turn this back on. I put my, whoops, can't do that here until I move. Put my rivers back on here. Turn off Canada. I can't stand to look at that. I'm going to do that. Okay. So let's say I'm ready to make a map. So I'm going to move into layout view. Again, I can do that here, or layout view. So I don't need my table of contents anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and unclick that and move that out of the way. If I click in the gray area up here, I want to make sure that my layout tools are clicked on. We were doing another process here. So my layout toolbar is now gone, so I'm going to turn on my layout toolbar here. And I can move into 100%, and I can zoom to the whole page so I can see where my page is. I can use the hand to kind of move my map over to center it. This hand moves my map page. That hand moves my data. So if I only wanted to look at Australia, I might want to zoom in on Australia there. This zooms my whole map up. So I have these tools move my data, these tools move my map. So I have a river here showing, I've got Australia there, and I have my map view. If I want to add elements, I can add a title. And once I click that, I'm going to double click this. I'm going to apply that. It's pretty small, so I'm going to go ahead and change this. It's black. We don't ever want full black. Still too small. Why is this not changing? Not big enough. Ooh, okay, I'll make it giant. There we go. All right. Your title should not be floating up above your map. I'm going to kind of put it there. Ugly pink, I'm going to put it halfway. 11, 5.5 would be halfway, and that would be kind of like, okay, so I've got a title. I can insert a north arrow. Again, we don't want black. I can insert my legend. I don't need that because it's kind of obvious. All right, so there's my legend. I can insert my text. No, I don't want to insert text. Oh yeah, text would be my name, and where did that go? It's very small. So I'm going to double click that. Once I start typing in it, then I can double click it to open it again. I'm going to drag it down here. So I've got the map elements in my layout view. I'm going to save more frequently than I just did. And then when I'm done, I'm going to export this as a PDF and put it inside my folder. And so what I should see when I'm done is the data folder, the directions, the original MXD, my copy, and then my really not very good map. So if you go up to the top section in Moodle, you're going to see a section called ArcMap Short Videos. And I have got a lot of videos that may help you if you get stuck. How to dock your table of contents. What if you lose your data? We'll talk about that later. Projecting your data, scale bar, legends. Next week we're going to look at a digital elevation model, changing your page orientation from landscape to portrait. What do you need in a projection when I ask you for projection? Queries, summarizing tables. So some of the skills that we're going to work over are in here. So my suggestion is that you print out the labs and use those as an interactive document so that you're making notes for yourself, places where maybe I made a jump that was too big and you had to stumble over that. Make that a working document.